Graham, I'm so glad to see you. How are you doing?
Good, Megan. All the better for seeing you.
I
You're
know.
one of the first people I met in this fight, and you've always been incredibly nice to me. So I've always appreciated that. So yeah, it's good to see you after all these years fighting this nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, I've appreciated you all these years too. You've always been very nice, and you're so open. And I mean, the hell that you've been through
Yeah,
has, I mean, it's hell. I don't know
yeah,
how to
yeah.
describe it. It's been so brutal, and I'm just so glad that you've survived and you recently left the UK to move to the US. How is
Yep.
that going? Are you loving America?
I am. I'm loving Scottsdale. I'm loving Arizona. I like the people. I like the heat very much. Um, and just constant sunshine is doing a lot of good for me after the gloom of the UK, which always had as a counterbalance, how fun all the different scenes were, the art scene or the music scene or the theater scene. There was always something interesting going on. But I was driving around recently, and I looked out the window and saw. Sorry, I mean just before I came over, and I looked out the window of my car, and I just saw some grime. Just saw like a bridge, the underside of a bridge, which was just black with grime, and I just thought that's all there is for me now is the grime. The grime is all that's left. I don't have any reason to be in this country. So and then of course as well, I felt um, the kind of I knew something was coming, and it turned out to be I can't talk about one thing, but it turned out to be involved the police both times, as I sort of knew it would. Um, and it's just kind of yeah. I mean, I did actually say that to Stella O'Malley once. I said sometimes I said sometimes I genuinely think I've died and gone to hell. This was when it was at its worst, and Stella was really shocked, and she said, "Don't say that again," because apparently it's not a good sign when your brain goes that way. But then I got to Arizona, and it feels like I maybe I wasn't in hell, maybe I was just in purgatory, and this is heaven because it's lovely, and I'm very proud to be here. Charlie Kirk was a neighbor. I was told a few days ago. He lives in. Sort of twin version of where I am, except for much, much richer people. And it's just up the road. And I'm so proud. I'm so proud to even share a fucking postcode with the man, or nearly share. I mean, I've gone from sort of wanting to keep him at a distance because I'd heard all the things that everybody else had heard, to just you know I mean I think a lot of people feel the same way. I think he's changed a lot of people's lives. I even got this recently, someone got that C.S. Lewis, because
Mm.
I hear it's beautiful, and I want to read more about the kind of person he was. I mean, I'm not religious, and I don't think I'll ever, get my religion back, my Catholicism. Certainly not in the form, because it was always like just unintelligible to me. Um, but then you read a beautiful thought, beautifully expressed, and it's a different thing. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it was like sorry, but just obviously we differed on things like abortion and stuff like that. But like, I don't know. He was an interesting guy. He was much better opponent than the people who were opposing him.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I honestly, I never really followed him that closely, to be honest, just because it's sort of the style of video and those kinds of headlines, like so and so owns the libs, I just tend not to watch that kind of stuff because I don't know. I actually don't like watching things on the internet very much in general. And I think it's sort of like geared towards younger people. And I'm sort of like, I'm overloaded on all the woke stuff, and I'm well aware of how stupid it all is. So I feel like I don't need to watch the debate to show me that it's all insanity and ridiculous and that they have no way to defend their views and their policy suggestions and their ideologies.
But what makes him fascinating to me is not always the content of his arguments. It's simply the way he comported himself. Just very, very elegant and graceful and compassionate. I think that, you know, I don't think it's one of the few things about the current moment that's a cliche, but it actually is true, which is that, you know, I think young boys are sort of ruthless and they don't know who to look to for, you know, a model of how to be. And I think he provided one, you know, and not only that, but provided one that the vast majority of people who I believe are good people want to do. You know, they want to live up to that type of standard, you know. Anyway,
yeah, to me, he just seemed like a really, really good man and a really positive man and a positive role model. And I think, he was affecting so much change in doing these debates. You know, I think he had a huge impact on the election. He brought on all these younger people, younger men in particular, to, you know, the Republicans and to supporting Trump and so on and so forth. And
he got Robert Kennedy together, didn't he, with Trump? He got those two sides together to make America healthy again, and he brokered a sort of peace deal between the two of them.
Did he? I didn't know that.
Yes, so I hear. And he brought those two huge constituencies they had together. And it's, you know, it's one of the reasons why it wasn't just a win, it was a landslide, you know. So I don't know. I mean, my worry a little bit is sometimes the people, you know, I'm very nervous about the anti-Semitism that I see just going absolutely. It's like a bushfire in the UK. I've never seen anything like it. It's frightening. It's like being in 1930s Germany. It is literally like that, you know. And then, you know, you come over here, and one of the things that I was very happy about was I didn't really see any sign of that over here. So it's sort of disturbing the way certain anti-Semitic, you know, blood libels and cliches are being given new life by very charismatic but weirdly, you know, weirdly against the Jews guys. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't like that aspect. It makes me nervous, you know.
It all seems really culty to me, like the obsession with Israel, the obsession with Palestine, and the obsession with the Jews. Like, it's just so all encompassing to these people. Like, to me, there's so many aspects of it that are baffling to me and now disturbing. You know, before October 7th, I really didn't understand how big anti-Semitism was. I think I wasn't around it ever, and I didn't follow those channels, and I didn't pay attention to it. So I just did not think it was really a thing anymore. And it's clearly a huge thing. And these people are just obsessed. You know, they can't talk about anything except for Palestine, Israel, and the Jews. Every time I say anything, somebody shows up in my mentions. Like, regardless of what I'm talking, I don't talk about Palestine and Israel very much at all. I certainly don't talk about Jews. Like, and every time I say anything, somebody shows up and makes some weird comment about Israel or the Jews or Palestine. It's very strange.
Yeah, it really is. And nothing about Sudan or, you know.
Like, why are you obsessed with Palestine? Like, this little shithole, like that you've never been to and you have no connection to. And I'm not saying people shouldn't care, but of all the things that you could care about in the world, the intense, insane focus on Palestine and Gaza is just really weird.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if they put all that Qatar money into building the place up and turning it into, allowing it to live up to its promise, considering where it is, how perfectly it's placed, to be a tourist spot. But they're teaching their kids from very, very young that it'll be a good thing if one day they manage to kill a Jew. That's what they're teaching the kids. It's like, whenever people say it to me, I always just say, they'll say Free Palestine. I'll say, yeah, from Hamas.
Yeah.
That's the people who and if Israel wipes out every Hamas leader, it'll be doing the world a huge favor, probably saving millions of future lives.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you another way the anti-Semitism behind it, Megan, is the fucking, excuse my language, the they complain about the bombing, where people are given time to get out and all that sort of thing, and they're notified and so on. They complain about that. But then the most targeted attack in history, the Lebanon beeper attack, which very, very precisely went after every, member of Hezbollah and only them, and didn't even try to kill them because they wanted to injure them to put more strain on the country. That is one of the most extraordinarily targeted and precise attacks I've ever seen. Sadly, one young girl was killed. But in terms of a military attack, it is so much more precise than anything we've seen up until then. And it was still the same. They still got it in the neck. In fact, you can't. Like what I've just said is probably going to be very controversial because, like, there's an idea that they did something wrong with that attack. But, like, how much more targeted do you want them to get? They blew all their dicks off. That's as targeted as it gets, and it made them, they won't be able to trust their electronics ever again. It severely took down a terror organization. And I just think, what are you complaining about? Like Manchester Arena, where they killed all those little girls as they were coming out of a what's her name? Ariana Grande, it was.
Ariana Grande. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Grande, yeah. That shows how old I am, 57. But yeah, it's like, what are you talking about? We want to stop those kinds of operations, We want to make sure they never happen again. Like what was it, the Bataclan or Bataclan in Paris, with that poor fucking guy from, imagine being on a band. That was the Eagles of death metal, this fun, like, pop band. And imagine being on stage and seeing that happen. And I remember being a bit angry at him for being Islamophobic. But that was the old days when I was just completely, I didn't realize I was being lied to by so many people,
Yeah, me neither. I mean, I, like you, was totally, I was so leftist. I don't think I didn't know any right-wing people. I didn't know Republicans. I didn't even know, like, in Canada, I didn't know people who voted conservative, and the conservatives in Canada are pretty middle of the road. They're not particularly right-wing or conservative. Like, they're pretty progressive actually. And it never even occurred to me that what I thought and believed in was wrong or a bad idea or irrational. I just assumed that everything that I was advocating for was morally correct and ethical and the best way forward, and that anybody who thought different must just not understand. But it was me that didn't understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a hard thing to break yourself out of when the whole of society is doing it. I mean, we are going to look back at this time in astonishment at how it just took over society. I mean, gender ideology, to such an extent that, like, doctors are using the phrases and the ideological language. Doctors, the last people who should be using those phrases, and it's just, I don't know. I think we will just, it's astonishing that any of us were able to break out of the spell, because the spell was so complete. It was like a big blanket, You know, I always think of something like Sleeping Beauty or something, where the whole kingdom falls asleep, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what it's like,
And when you look at progressives, the left, liberals, I never know exactly how I should describe them. Democrats in America, and I mean in Canada, I guess the left. I, they are not thinking at all. They seem completely brainwashed. So I think it does seem sort of miraculous that any of us were able to break out of this and see what's really going on and see that we're being lied to and see that the things that we're advocating for really don't make any sense and don't really help in the way that we thought that
Yeah.
we assumed that it would help. And even you can see it in the response to the murder of Charlie Kirk and then this hysteria around Jimmy Kimmel's show being temporarily suspended. They're not paying attention to what they're saying. They don't even understand the words they're saying. They're not thinking about this at all. They're just
Yeah.
reacting, and they're reacting in ways that are completely ridiculous and hypocritical. And they don't see it. I don't think it's even that. I think some people cynically will say like, oh, well, they just don't care about being hypocrites. But I don't even think they realize how hypocritical they're being.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think you're right. I don't think that it even registers to them. And it was something that I've been speaking about from the start on this, which is the tiered reality we find ourselves in. Like we're on twin parallel tracks with all the information that we're gathering. And the people on one track think that the Jimmy Kimmel story is the greatest free speech story of the last fortnight. I mean, it's fucking extraordinary.
It's insane. It's
Yeah.
literally insane. Like you are not using your brain if you think that. I mean, what did they miss the past 5 years, the past 10 years? Did they miss the news yesterday where YouTube admitted that the White House and the Biden administration was directing them to remove channels from YouTube? Did they miss Mark Zuckerberg admitting the same with regard to Facebook? I mean, did they miss the Twitter files? Did they miss the amount of people who were banned from social media like us? And, again, the entire for disrupting the COVID narrative.
Yeah, no, sure. It's like
Jimmy Kimmel's show. Like, who even cares about Jimmy Kimmel?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. He's one of these people who, he's never really registered for me as a comic presence. Conan has registered, and David Letterman, but I just with the Kimmel thing, the only time I hear about him is when he's just putting his chips in against Trump, and it's not necessary. It's not necessary for a show like that. You don't have to do it, and in fact, it's a really bad time to do it because people need to be brought together. I think one thing that's happening is Trump derangement syndrome is really beginning to make people look particularly stupid. Don't know if you saw, but like there was a TikTok of a pregnant woman rubbing Tylenol cream or something into her pregnant belly. I mean, because Trump said you shouldn't. And the fact that Harvard said you shouldn't, and a bunch of other fucking studies say you shouldn't, doesn't matter to these people, and they just go all in on everything Trump does is bad. And meanwhile, I believe didn't he like in his like a very short amount of time of his presidency, hasn't he taken out all the top 10 most wanted on the FBI's list? I think he's taken down the top 10 international, the sort of James Bond criminal gang, and he's, from what I hear, he's really put the border under control, which has to be a good thing. Ireland and the UK would dearly love someone to put the border under control, because it's just the usual thing is happening. The insane immigration levels that don't harm anyone except the working class, who the people pushing it have no contact with, unless they're cleaning their homes or delivering them food, And so, these small towns get somewhere. There was a guy He was arrested in Ireland and the UK, migrant. He was here for 12 months and he was arrested for raping a 9-year-old or something. And apparently he said when he was arrested, I had no idea the UK was so, what's the word did he use? Was so strict. You know, and it's like these hotels get put in small towns. They completely flip the makeup of the town, and no one's asked these locals for permission, you know. And also another thing that's happening that's I'm sure you recognize, Megan, after many years, our stories have been completely ignored or suppressed by mainstream media. But they simply don't talk about it. Like anything that puts their side, which I call the regime, in a bad light, they just don't report on it. Like RTE is the major channel in Ireland, you know. Father Ted was one of their major successes, you know, even though they had to buy it from Channel 4. It was a huge success for them. They didn't report on me getting arrested, you know. And then a few days later, the guy who runs the Late Late Show, his name is Patrick Kilty, he's talking about Jimmy Kimmel. And he says, Jimmy, come over here. You can say whatever the fuck you want, because he's punk rock, you see. He goes, you can say whatever the fuck you want. And me and Helen Joyce and a few other people were saying, when, you know, Stella O'Malley, when are we on? You know? But they just pretend they don't exist. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, that was the experience I had in Canada. You know, I mean, you know this. Like, I was one of the only people in Canada, certainly the only feminists, the only women to speak out against gender ideology when nobody was talking about it at all. And the media just pretended that I didn't exist. And, you know, and so people forget that I exist too. You know, people always say, oh, Jordan Peterson testified against Bill C-16. Like Jordan Peterson was spoke out and warned everyone. And, you know, he did, but like in a completely different way than I did, because I was talking about the impact on women and women's rights. But you know, they would report on him because he fit the narrative that they wanted, because they could position him as a right winger and a misogynist and a bigot. And they couldn't do that to me because I was one of them. Like at the time, I was a feminist and I was a leftist. So their only option was to just pretend that I didn't exist, because that's not the story they wanted to tell.
Yeah. No, that's it. And they wanted to tell the story of Jordan Peterson. There's something suspicious about Jordan Peterson because he's got, you know, he uses big words. You know, I think that's their main argument about it. You know, he's too big for his boots. You know, bit of a smarty pants. You know, and like my favorite story, but my favorite thing they did to him once, I think it was The Guardian. I'm always going to blame The Guardian because I hate them, so I'll say it was The Guardian. But The Guardian went to interview him, right? And he had on his walls all these posters of communist Russia, you know, communist propaganda. And they said to him, oh, I see you have all this communist propaganda on the walls. And he goes, yeah, I've always been interested in propaganda. And they said, I notice you have no Nazi propaganda on the walls, as if that was suspicious. As if he had put up Nazi posters, they'd be like, what the fuck are you doing with Nazi posters in your house? It's the funniest thing. You know, you can't do anything right because these people, they're just out to get you. They're all a bunch of Cardinal Richelieus, you know. Like I must find the quote. I must look it up at some point. But apparently, Cardinal Richelieu said something like, "If you give me 4 letters written in any man's hand, I will find enough in them to destroy him." Something like that, you know. And that's what we've all been. I mean, we've all donated far more than 4 letters to the internet down through the years, and all these Cardinal Richelieus can hunt through everything we've written, everything we've said, and find things that form the picture of you that they want to form, you know. Right. So, yeah. So it's fascinating time to be alive.
Yeah, it really is. It's nonstop entertainment, at least, I'll tell you that. Do you think, did Charlie Kirk's murder frighten you? I mean, you've been such a target for so many years. Did that make you even more frightened to do events and things like that? I mean, now you're in America. Are you scared?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I'm well known enough over here to be a target. I think if people saw me here, they think they were hallucinating. Even if they did know me, um, and also where I am is so spread out. I can't imagine it's so hot. You can't wear black. So Antifa are fucked in Arizona. You know, so it's
Yeah, you could never wear a balaclava
yeah.
in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Yeah, all you have to do is run 5 feet and they'll pass out. So I don't know. I mean, what can you do? But I will say this: I think in general, it's a what I find the dumbest thing about this whole fucking situation is that they created a really aggrieved, violent group of men who think they're fighting for their civil rights. I mean, we didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? But humanity thought, yeah, let's give angry young men a reason to feel aggrieved. Men who can't have sex, let's give them a reason to feel aggrieved. Um, it's the bleakest civil rights movement because as you know, it's not for civil rights; it's for extra male rights, and we might be fighting against these people for the rest of our lives.
Well, and it's not just extra male rights, it's like rights for predators to be predatorial.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's a free pass for men to behave like predators, like that, to go against social norms that we've had in place for a long time for good reason. Like men can't go into the girls' change room or the women's washroom or, share the space in a women's transition house. It's just, it's and men and women's prisons, for goodness sakes. Like, I mean, that's what it is. It's like I think I've called it like a perverts rights movement or something like that.
Yeah. I did one of those. What do you call them? Hitler downfall parodies, where I did it about Owen Jones, and there's one bit where they discuss there's basically all these battalions of LGBT plus, and at one point I had the line, someone says something like, "Yes, the pervert wing, we're not happy about that," but like the longer it goes on, the more I realize the whole thing is the pervert wing. The pervert wing is the only wing. It's like people. What happened to the phrase "dirty old man"?
Yeah.
Did dirty old men disappear? No. Now they are given women's awards, and told that they're the most extraordinary thing in the world. And it's I just don't. I still will never. I'll always be astonished that it got as far as it did, because it's so stupid. It's so stupid. It's just mental.
It's wild. I mean, it's a satire, right? It's a Monty Python skit, quite literally, right? And it's wild that it took off and that it stuck and that this many people are fighting for it and acting aggrieved and acting like these ridiculous looking men. The most ridiculous looking men on the planet are these like marginalized victims, that there are women, that they need to be protected, and that anybody who dares say, no, you're just a ridiculous man or you're just a pervert, is this terrible, dangerous, violent, hateful bigot. They tried to label us as terrorists in Canada.
And they are the violent, they are like, I'm so glad that Antifa has been named a domestic terror organization.
Oh yeah, I've been saying this for years. There's like, clearly this is a terrorist group. That's their aim. That's what they're doing. Like they don't hide it. They're violent.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the American ones are a little bit braver. They'll occasionally hit a man, but like, but they're not. They're, the way they spread terror is merely through their presence. You got, I mean, I certainly wouldn't make any sweeping generalizations about women, especially considering some of the fucking hard asses I know, in this fight. But the aim is to stop women who are normally, more sensitive, more, they have to look after themselves more because of their physical, because they're not physically as strong as men. And so these men's presence, all they're trying to do is frighten women specifically, because if they can stop women from coming to speak, they've won, And all through the years, this mocking thing that women get when they turn out, these brave women who will turn out, like there'll be some local chapter of a turf group, there'll be 8 women in it, and they'll all turn out with a banner and they'll stand on the street and they'll be made fun of because there's only 8 of them. But the fucking bravery it takes to stand out on the street and risk being attacked by one of these scumbags, I'm always amazed there's 8, I'm proud to know some of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there was always, like there was next to nobody in Canada. I mean, there weren't any groups for the longest time, there are now, but for the most part, there was nothing. There was just a few individual people saying obvious things. We were such easy targets.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you who I'm loving at the moment. She's like, her content is great, if you want to use that terrible word, but Beth Byrne. You know Beth?
I don't know her. No, I don't. Beth Byrne. Let me look her up.
Bourne. She's like, she lives in this tiny town, I think. I mean, I because she seems to know everybody by name. And she and her husband just walk around confronting people saying, why is this boy in this race? Why is this boy in this race? Why is this boy, going into, would you allow someone to go into a girls' locker room? And all these people, they turn their backs. One guy attacked her recently. I think Beth is taking it further. I hope she is. And, it's just incredible bravery, and we're going to, again, just dramatically, it's I always just think, look at all these heroes this fight has created. We've got a new version of Boardwalk Chris and I know there's been tension between Boardwalk Chris and people, but we have this new version of him in the UK, and unlike Chris, he's a small guy, and he goes out, he's older in years, and he wears a sandwich board, and he's looking up at the people he's interviewing. I mean, again, just pure bravery, because he knows they're violent. He knows some people will try and kick him or kick his sign or steal the sign and stuff, and he still does it. I love these people. We're very lucky to know many of them, Meghan. I'll always be proud about it. The thing I used to, makes me cry now to read it, is the St. Crispin's Day speech from Henry V, I think it is, where Henry V is trying to gee up his men before a battle. And he starts talking about how we'll look back on St. Crispin's Day and we'll compare our scars and we'll say, I was there and I was there. And it's so beautiful. It always makes me think of our allies in this fight. It's been a real honor to know them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's as much as it's been incredibly difficult and stressful and scary, like it's changed me in so many ways that I love. Like I love who I am as a person, and who I am as a person was so profoundly shaped by having to fight and just be, as be libeled and slandered and attacked and insulted and abandoned and ostracized, lose your friends, to lose almost everything, and to come out stronger on the other side. But then, with this whole group of really incredible people that now, who also were brave enough to stand up on their own and face all this. I mean, it's, you don't become a brave person or a courageous person unless you do brave and courageous things. I don't think you can be a truly confident person or really like yourself, even if you haven't been through some really serious challenges and managed to overcome and come out on the other end and know that you'll be fine. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about me. I do not give a shit.
Yeah. There's a very funny bit in the new Wes Anderson film which is again another portrait of a father. I find that very beautiful. I find his approach to films very beautiful. And the father in this case is a very rich guy who kind of lives like in between countries and has a cave of his own and stuff, and at one point he looks directly into his daughter's eyes, and after a long speech on how special he is, he says, "I don't need human rights." It's so funny because it's like, whoa, and I do feel slightly outside of the normal rules, because I was told to shut up, and they did everything they could to me, and they can't shut me up, and I'm making money now. I'm back, write journalism. I've got a Substack that's quite successful. We're winning the argument again and again, and it's just a lovely time to be us, really, because we're getting exonerated every day.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, no one will ever say, "Oh, you know what? We were a bit mean to these people." No one will ever admit they did anything,
No, I mean, it feels great to be right about so many things. It does feel good, but I guess I'm a little bit petty because it's hard for me to not be angry at all the people who are now coming out and being like, "Oh, yeah, no, this is a bad idea," or maybe this is a bad idea, or maybe we screwed up, and gosh, like, have you noticed that there's men competing as women in sport? This is crazy. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, go away. I don't want you. Don't say anything. Like, get out of here.
The two recent ones are Emma Watson, who's like, "Oh, I hope I can look past her political opinions."
Oh, that's right.
That's Emma Watson. And also, who else did it today? Someone else did it today. Jamil, or whatever her name is. Jamil.
Oh, she's very irritating, isn't she?
Oh, she's so annoying. And she was such a handmaiden, she was horrible. And the best thing she ever did, though, was she got this like cutesy photograph of her and what's his name? Oh, he's the worst. He's the bald guy. He's the bald guy who calls himself a woman.
Is he the one who stole women's clothes out of their luggage, like the Democrat?
No. Let me remind myself. Yeah. Oh, he's unbelievable. He's a terrible guy. He's one of the worst. He keeps suing his parents. Does that ring a bell?
I don't know what it is. Suing his parents. Lord, for what?
The reason, because his parents were trying to chuck him out of his house because he's a big fat bald incel, and there's a famous group of photographs of him in a woman's shelter, and he just takes photographs of himself in this woman's shelter. He's a horrible man, but like Jamil like named him as one of the foremost feminist thinkers. He literally
love that.
Oh, he's it's the clearest, most perfect expression. And I know this is a phrase that shorthand that's being used at the moment, so apologies that it's a bit, but what's it called? Suicidal empathy,
Right.
And like the women who used to write to serial killers, I always think about them,
Right.
and I think about the Manson family tiptoeing through people's homes because, in the middle of the night, or people leaving their door open for the Manson family to walk around and just look at the place because they thought hippies were some sort of special, they had insights. you know, and they were just a bunch of dirty tramps.
I mean, it's like progressive women, that they are the biggest problem. I mean, I know it's I don't mean the biggest problem in the world, but in terms of what we're talking about, this, like, we're empathetic to the point of endangering ourselves and destroying ourselves. I mean, the amount of women that will, I'll, if I speak the truth about this or anything else, like, it's like, no, I don't think that mentally ill drug addicts should be out on the street. I don't want to be on the bus with a crazy man. They're like, oh, well, but he has problems. I'm like, yeah, I don't want his problems to be my problem.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
he has problems. Like, get away from me. You're insane and maybe violent, and maybe you're gonna assault me, or maybe you're gonna spit on me, or barf on me, or scream on me, or you
Or
stink. Like, get
yeah,
away
that
from me. Like,
poor woman in the bus, you
yeah.
know, that's one of the worst things I've ever seen. And well, how many
Yeah.
times
Oh
was he
God, it was
released?
disturbing. Yeah, the young woman. Yeah,
And he was
sorry.
released something like uh 19 times, something like that, or 9 times. It wasn't. I'll tell you what, it wasn't one.
No,
you know
no.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
there was a whole history of warning signals that he was a criminal,
yeah,
dangerous, unstable, and then he murdered this poor girl. God, yeah, that was horrific.
yeah.
One of the ones who annoyed me a lot recently, like one of these people who came around and said, "Oh, this trans thing, maybe not so good," was Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I was just, people are like, you should be more gracious, and these people are coming in, we should support them. And I was like, no, we shouldn't, because, of all people, journalists and reporters, it's your job to report facts and to report the truth and to do your research. So I believe that there's plenty of people who just weren't paying attention and didn't really realize what was going on, or just didn't care. It didn't have anything to do with their life. They're like, whatever, let them dress up like women. Who cares? They didn't get it.
Yeah,
Fine. But,
yeah,
you're a journalist, and he's, talked about this stuff and been on panels discuss, like, he
yeah,
did know what was going on, and he just chose to go along with the lie and pretend that the lie was real. And I don't forgive the journalists and the reporters who are now coming around, because they were just cowards before.
yeah. But like, I mean, Gladwell, at least, I don't know of any. Did he ever come after you personally, or did he come after anyone you know personally?
I don't know, not me, no.
Because like I draw a slight distinction between people who went out of their way to castigate those of us who were trying to bring attention to it. Like, and
Mm.
for me, the ultimate example is John Ronson, who was like one of my close friends for about 25 years, and then said I shouldn't have brought up the Karen White case, which was two women being sexually assaulted in prison. This is a journalist telling me not to bring this up, and also making excuses for this guy who's on this women's basketball team. They're like teenagers, and the guy's in his 40s. I mean, just insane stuff. But he literally wrote a book called "So You've Been Publicly Shamed," and here we were all going through it. It had become a sort of industrialized process. It followed the same kind of playbook every single time. Your whole career could be dismantled by one anonymous accusation, and he couldn't give a fuck. He couldn't give a fuck. And I mean, at the very least, you would think he'd be interested in maybe a follow up. How is public shaming advanced? But no,
Yeah.
because that would mean addressing it, and he's too much of a coward to address it.
What do you think about Bill Maher? I mean, he's been so bad on this issue, and then people keep insisting to me that he actually has been good on this issue and he's been challenging it. It's like, no, he keeps saying, well, some men really are women on the inside, and gender is way more complicated, and there's a whole bunch of genders. And then when he talks about you on the show, I couldn't believe it. I mean, he acted like you were this horrible, well, some people have talked about the trans thing, and that's fine. But this guy seemed like such a real
Yeah,
asshole. And I was like, do you even know who you're talking about? Like, I can barely believe that he really paid attention to anything you were saying. But like remind us what happened there. I'm sure you know the clip better than I do.
Well, it's just because I know I don't, because I don't watch things like that. When I
Oh,
just
okay.
hear about them, it's enough to know what he said. But like when people do that, they're a very specific type of liberal, like Jesse Singal, what's her name, Katie Per,
Herzog.
Helen Lewis, John Ronson. They're very much, they're all on the dinner party circuit, and they can take a step into the waters of disagreeing with their tribe, but they can't put two and two together to see what else might be wrong with their tribe.
Mm,
And they're too fond of dinner parties, and they're too fond of their book deals and so on. And uh, I just think it's a certain type, and Mar seems to be the same. I bet you he's got someone, young relative or something, who says they're this or that, and he just thinks, well, what's wrong with that, and how could anyone object to this, to happiness of this, blah blah blah, all the usual stuff that's really about thinking with your heart and not with your head, and not realizing that the people you think you're helping, you're actually hurting, you know and I mean, you've seen the damage that these procedures do on young kids who think it's true. And someone like Mara is being, I mean, luckily no young kids are watching this show, but he's adding to this societal acceptance of things like double mastectomies on teenage girls, and it needs to be actively fought against. And so I think maybe he's guilty because he's not actively fighting against it, and he knows it's wrong. He knows it's wrong. He had to walk off a show because they were talking such nonsense about childhood transition. They compared gender affirming care to cancer treatment or something like that, and he walked
mm,
off the show. He just can't face it, like a lot of people, because there's a sort of a more terrifying thing behind that, which is, how can you believe anything ever again if you were uh, 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 successfully anesthetized to what was going on with these kids for about 8 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, the issue with these people that you just mentioned, and one of the things that I take issue with is that they insist on using so-called preferred pronouns, but not just that they insist on using preferred pronouns, but they act like people who won't use preferred pronouns and refer to males as he and him and females as she and her are beneath them, like we're unethical and immoral, and that we are only doing it to be cruel. And then it makes me not be able to take them very seriously, because it makes me think you're not really you don't really understand this, and you're not really connecting the dots if you can't see why this is actually really important. But also that, why would it be important to call a man she ever? Why? For what?
Yeah. It's for this sort of aristocratic system of etiquette they've created. Like I sometimes say jokingly, but I do actually think it's also true, that like those celebrities who are having trans kids are basically trying to create a new aristocracy. And that aristocracy is people in TV, people in films, people in the media, cool people you want to come to your restaurant, people you want to be seen talking to. They're the aristocracy. And no one outside of the aristocracy believes any of this shit. No one believes it. No one,
Mhm.
no one believes it. But they have somehow managed to create this safe space where they can believe just insane nonsense, and and not only that, but they can create a sort of economy around themselves, so they can continue to make terrible TV shows that no one likes. Like, it's so rare to have someone say, "Oh, have you seen such and such? It's amazing." It doesn't happen as much now, and I don't think it's just that I'm getting older. I think it's just that, well, there's two things going on. One is that a lot of writers have stopped reading, which is a real problem that needs to be addressed.
Mm.
And the other problem is people who want to make movies about the world they think should exist rather than the world that does exist. which I always think is much more interesting and dramatic and exciting to watch. You know, I don't want to see, sort of, what were those things, after school specials all the time, you know? I remember them very well from when I was a kid, the American ones, you know?
Yeah, I can't stand the like. They do it even in like documentaries. It'll always end with this political messaging, and I'll be enjoying the documentary, and it'll be good, and then the end, or the documentary miniseries, and then the last episode of the series is just this like ideological political messaging, and they start talking about the patriarchy or racism or so on and so forth, and I'm like, you just ruined the whole freaking documentary. It's a documentary. I don't want a message.
Yeah. No, it's like there's this school marmish quality to everything. I was telling someone today that some comedians were part of this comedian stand-up comedy course, and they had to do a gig. And before they went out, the guy who ran the place said, "No punching down, no making fun of trans people." And so they all went on, and the women all talked about their periods, and the men all talked about masturbation, and it was like, that's the guardrails were so bad that they couldn't really do anything interesting, and I think that's what we have now. There is, what's his name, Tim Dillon, is very funny about Weinstein. He keeps saying, "I can't wait for Weinstein to get out of prison and start making the greatest movies ever made again." And so I don't know. It's a strange old time, It's very much a time in flux, I think. I don't think we really know where the chips are going to fall,
No, I have no idea. I mean, I'm very glad that the tides have turned so much in America. There is a real movement that is fearless in terms of, saying these things that no one was allowed to say for so long. Like, you couldn't openly support Trump even, you couldn't openly be a Republican. You'd get put on a list and ostracized by everyone. And
it was a Larry David storyline, remember?
Oh, yeah, sort of. Remind me.
Sitting in a restaurant with him because he didn't want to hang out with them, so he wears a MAGA hat, I mean, that was a whole plot line. But I was out the other day with Laura Becker, who's a detransitioner. Yeah. And she was wearing a MAGA hat, and I just seemed like the most natural thing in the world, But
it's kind of fun now. Like, you feel like you're part of the cool kids club. Which is not how it was in 2016.
Yeah.
Or 2020 or 2021.
I'm seeing a lot of history happening at the moment. Like, I remember when I was in the UK, I was out on October 8th after the massacre, and I saw all the protesters coming out supporting Palestine already before Israel had made a move, That was very revealing. But also coming over to Arizona, and when Charlie Kirk died, and we went to a sort of preliminary service. It wasn't the main service. And it was just very moving, just really decent, lovely people. And then you see the way they're described on the BBC and stuff, like it's a fascist rally. Unbelievable what they're trying to get away with. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I think you told Sky News recently that you thought satire was dead.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
or you said you wouldn't be able to make Father Ted or the IT Crowd now.
No, yeah, because the most ridiculous thing in the world at the moment is the trans movement, and naturally that's what I would be making fun of if I could, but you're not allowed. It's as I say, these kids were told they couldn't make fun of anything or anyone, and as a result, their imagination goes to the blandest possible solution. So you can't think, well, there's everything I'm being presented with every day, I'm not allowed to write about it. It's crazy, but yet It's the only way this thing has survived, because men in women's prisons, why isn't that already over? Why hasn't that been over? Why is that still, that should have been over like 7 years ago. As soon as that was noticed, it should have been over. And yet it sort of lingers. It's like, now hang on a sec, you're literally putting sex offenders in there with their targets, and it's still going on. And it's one of those reasons, I think, why I sort of had that unshakable feeling that, oh, maybe I'm dead. Maybe this is just like, there's actually a great book by Peter Carey called Bliss, which is about a guy who gets into an accident and then he's still in his ordinary life, but he begins to think he's in hell. And it's a very funny film as well. But that's what it's like. It's like, how could anyone look at, what happened to Jazz Jennings, for instance, what still happens, or Iman Khalif, who, by the way, fun fact, Helen Lewis is still calling she.
Who is this?
Helen Lewis is still calling the boxer Iman Khalif she.
Oh, Iman Khalif, yeah. Oh, really?
Yes.
Good Lord. That's crazy, because I think everybody now knows that he's a man for real. Like, I know that there was, when the debate was happening, we, bothered to figure out what was really going on, which was that he was a male and he was cheating. But there was so much misinformation out there that I understood why people were confused. And people in general are really confused about intersex conditions. Like, they think that intersex is a whole different sex rather than just, an abnormality, with a male or with a female. But that Helen is acting like this is like a pronouns issue. It's very strange.
So crazy.
I don't know. Like, what point is she trying to push there?
He literally beat up women in the ring, and she's kind of bowing, bending the knee. Extraordinary person, extraordinary. But I don't know. I mean, I think in the end, when we all come out of this, I think that we all will know exactly where we were on all this. I mean. There's a lot of people who can hold their heads up very, very high, and there's a lot of people who will just pretend they weren't involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all that stuff will sort itself out quite naturally.
Yeah. I have to, of course, ask you what's happening with your case. So you were, for anyone who's listening, who's unaware, you were met by a bunch of police officers in London. When you landed, you got off the plane and you were arrested and you were interrogated and you were charged because of tweets.
Yeah.
How was that? How was that experience for you?
Well, the best thing about it, the thing I'll always remember is the fact that the bed in my cell was more comfortable than Premier Economy on the plane, because I can't sleep on planes.
No, me neither. It's so uncomfortable. I hate it.
But when I got into the cell, they had a mattress on and a pillow that was fine. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be able to sleep here. And I slept till 10 p.m. at night, after being arrested, after going to sleep at around 2 p.m. And they were going to interview me, but they said they had a note that said they saw me asleep, and I was so adorable they didn't want to wake me. They didn't phrase it like that, but
it looks like he's having such a good rest. Let's let him.
Exactly. And I know me, I was probably snoring my head off, So yeah, I was in there much longer than I should have been, really. But then again, they were being nice, I guess. But we're suing them. There's like two of the tweets. One literally said a photograph you can smell, which happens to be true of trans activists. They don't smell great. It's all
the hygiene issues for sure, and just
yeah. Most of them are students, and it's fine, but like it's not. It's a statement of fact. It's not a bigoted thing to say, and also
it's just you can say people smell. I mean,
yeah, but the other one said, I hate them because they're misogynists and homophobes. And it's like, what am I going to get into trouble there for? Being anti-misogynist and homophobic, you know? Very strange. And then the third, like basically the police have no idea what they're reading. It might as well be hieroglyphics. They just don't understand what they're reading.
Right.
And so when they see me saying punch someone in the balls, you know, they think, oh, you know, that's so mean. They don't have balls. They're all transsexuals. Like, no, they're not. 95% of them aren't, you know. And I just think they're just being led by the nose ring by these trans activists. I mean, that's a whole other story that I can't really talk about quite yet. But once all the news comes out about what's really going on, this is really only a small group of men causing absolute havoc in the UK. They're behind all the arrests, all the recent arrests. They're behind so many examples of harassment. And, you know, all the police would have to do to clear up their books would be to arrest 5 men and say for wasting police time or for harassment or one of these things. And all this nonsense would go away for them. They wouldn't have to deal with it. And you can tell they're frustrated because they want to be out catching bad guys, you know?
Yeah, what a waste of time to go around arresting people over their freaking tweets. It's so silly. It must make them feel so stupid.
Yeah, I got that impression when I was arrested at the airport. I thought they're kind of we're all kind of trapped in here with each other. You know, like it's like they don't want to do it. I don't want to be arrested. Well, you know, what's going on? But I worry that this is because the UK is so far gone in terms of out of control immigration and out of control trans activism. I worry that the police are going to move into a new phase of being just basically cattle herders. You know what I mean? Just like you know, keeping everybody calm, herding them into the various places they're supposed to go, and really not more concerned with ordinary people than they are with criminals. You know, because really the threat now is ordinary people, you know.
Well, yeah, and I mean, they don't want to do anything with the criminals. Like, they won't keep them in prison. They won't, you know, all they do is the people who are actually dangerous, like people who are violent, who assault, never mind criminals who are thieves. I mean, they throw them in prison for the night and then let them out the next day, and they just keep committing the same crimes over and over and over, and nobody can be really bothered to do anything about it, and it just keeps getting worse and worse.
Yeah. It's not great. It's not great. But I you know, and the worst thing about it is just, as I say, I think they're moving into a phase where they've swept so much under the rug that they're going to start arresting people for noticing that the rug looks funny, you know, rather than actually trying to sort out the problems under the rug, you know.
Right.
So that's what I worry about. That's why I felt I had to leave the UK, you know. Feel a lot safer here.
So you're working on a TV show with Andrew Doyle over there. Is that correct?
Actually, a number of ideas. We've written one sitcom that's kind of in a first draft form. I'm not 100% happy with it yet. I'm not sure what it needs, but it needs something. But we've also got all these other great ideas. Some of which have to be secret, some of which can I tell you about anything? Can I tell you about that's? Oh, I don't know, just a few film ideas that I'm doing a film at the moment that I'm really enjoying. Quite a sweet storyline. I'm just trying to make it you know, punchy because it's already sweet. So I'm trying to give it some grit. And I'm really enjoying that, you know. It's a great thing to be able to lean on AI for things like scene descriptions, you know. So if like I'm writing a scene in a hospital, it can kind of create the hospital almost like a little play theater that you can move your characters on. Because like when you write prose in a script, it's just to tell the cast and crew what we want to see, how we want the film to be shot and lit, and what we want to hear on the soundtrack, and the atmosphere. And that's kind of a hard thing to that's what slows you down, writing all those kind of descriptions of things that no one reads for pleasure. They're just there to fill the scene out. So AI is great for doing that and giving you a first draft of everything so that you can refine it and play around with it and stuff, and it's making writing much more fun than it used to be. It's like writing with a collaborator.
I mean, I hate AI, but I'm glad that you're enjoying it. It's kind of a Luddite. Like, I don't like new technologies. Whenever there's a new social media platform, I'm like, I don't want another one. I don't want, like, I don't trust any of it. I just,
You're right. I just like, what I really love about this is I can turn on the voice mode or transcription mode, and I can just press these two buttons. You'll hear a noise here. And whenever that noise happens, everything I say after that is transcribed into the text box, Whoa. So I can do that, and I can ramble about how I want a scene to happen and what I want to happen in it. And I can just chat and chat and chat and chat. And then it gives me a first draft based on what I've said.
And we all know you love chatting, so.
Yeah, well, we were going to go after 45 minutes. Look how that turned out. But but the last thing I'll just say on it is, the piece I wrote about my arrest at the airport that was on my Substack. Well, yeah. I did that, which that was something that would normally take me about 3 or 4 days to write. The way I wrote it was, I told ChatGPT a rough version of what happened, and then I said, ask me questions until you have enough to write a first draft on the whole evening. And and that's the only reason I was able to get that out so quickly, because I had to get it.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to get it out before my enemies, because they were going to try and break it and make it sound like they won. So
okay, good to know. I'm told that it can help me learn how to speak Spanish at long last, but I haven't really been able to figure out how to do that. I can't. Learning a new language is so hard, and learning Spanish, I thought it would be easy because I speak French, so I would know the Latin roots of the word, but it's still a completely different language. And where I live, Spanish is very, very different in every different place, like Brazil, like Spain, like it's super different. And then it's different within Mexico, and there's so much slang. And where I live, people speak really, really fast, and there's so much slang, and there's all these words that mean like 100 million different things depending on the context. Like, it's like there's one word and you can use it in 30 different ways, and I'm just like, I can't do this. Every time I try, I'm like, no, I'm never gonna be. People think that it's because I'm, I don't care, but I do care because I love Spanish and I love Mexico, and I obviously want to be able to talk to my neighbors and engage with. There's tons of people. There's obviously lots of gringos in my town, but there's also tons of people who don't speak English, and it's like a real impediment.
Have you ever tried using ChatGPT as a translator?
No, but I think I should try to start, because I've heard
it doesn't make it. It can be good. It doesn't really. The conversations don't flow, but you can, like, I when I want to speak to someone, because like the service for this apartment are all Spanish people, or Mexican people, and they and I always feel bad that I can't talk to them, So I'll always do that. I'll say something into it, and then it's like, oh, everyone's delighted.
Okay, I should give
she knows that she can pick it up and do it to me when she needs to tell me something, So it's good. I like it.
Yeah, that would be good. That would hopefully. I feel constantly guilty. Like, I constantly am feeling like an asshole because, like, I can't really talk to my butcher or my landlord. I mean, I can say I know how to, order the meat that I'd want to order, but then if somebody says something back to me, I'm like,
you're thrown. Yeah.
like, But anyway, that's my problem. It has nothing to do with you or this podcast. It was so great to talk with you again. It's always great to talk with you.
But it was lovely to talk to you, Megan.
Yeah, thanks.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much for making the time. I know you're really busy and you just came out of traveling and have a lot to do. So I super appreciate you making the time. And I hope to see you soon.
See you soon.
Okay,
Bye,
take care. Bye-bye.